All right, so welcome everybody to yeah another session of talking about how technology can actually help striking the perfect balance in the defleeting process. And really, let's talk about today what is actually happening in the automotive sector. As Johan just mentioned, the IAA, which used to be a motor show, now as a mobility show here in Munich. And I didn't have yet time personally to go, but I'm going tomorrow morning to have a look. And what we've seen in the press, there's a lot happening, right? So um, let's talk about the defleet process and what it is actually today. And we've put this here together, and we believe in Cox actually. It's really a careful balancing act, with trade-offs between speed and efficiency, because um, in the end you want to have a very fast process because you want to accelerate your defleeting process at any given moment. And at the same time, it needs to be correct, it needs to be accurate. So that speed can very often lead to lost efficiency. And the question is really, how can you strike that really ideal balance between a process that meets your customer requirements and at the same time can live up to the highest expectation in terms of quality. So we've gone through, what are the things that we need to think of when you actually do that defleeting. And as I mentioned before, a couple of these points we've already talked about. The time to remarketing is becoming more and more important. Now, if we think about, in the past we had leasing agreements that were 36 months, sometimes even longer. Now these are obviously changing now with a market where we have shared economies, where we have short-term rentals, where we have changes happening more often. So to do this process that once upon a time was a physical process of somebody coming to look at the car, that won't be possible if your car changes owner twice a month. Um, at the same time, the accuracy, we know that inspectors are human beings, and human beings have good days and they have bad days. So relying on a human being taking the information might probably not be something that you can do, let alone that, again, from a time cost value, it won't be possible when you twice a month change your owner to send somebody physically to have a look at the car. Logistics is another topic here. The more those cars change, the more logistics play into the mix. If you have to transport the car twice, you might be needing to have very lean and short transport times. So again, you cannot hold up the car in a physical process that needs to wait for an inspector to come. Um, Cost control, it's all about cost in this modern world. In these, when you change over your cars more often, when all is about the uptime or the usability of your fleet, then again, you cannot afford long, lengthy processes. And the same goes for the evaluation of the damage. It has to be spot on. It has to be correct. And the topic of pre-inspection and confirmation also is something that today it exists in some forms, in very manual forms, but obviously has still a lot of space for improvement. And I want to talk today a little bit about how we at Cox actually at least see these things being facilitated, because the traditional defleet process where you have a compound or a dealer, like we've shown it here, that is really just not happening in the future anymore. It might just be one out of 10 of your defleet scenarios where you actually defleet like this. The customers today expect this to happen in front of their doorstep. They want that convenience factor to it. So what happens then if a defleet process is not successful? Well, you have unhappy customers, you might have delays in your remarketing, you might have unhappy buyers when the data is not correct, and let alone as an OEM fleet leasing company, you might have unhappy customers. So you take that all in, it all goes against that very, very important measurement of customer satisfaction. In our day and age, customer satisfaction is so important, and it becomes more and more transparent. If you look at booking hotels or other services, everything is rated nowadays. So you cannot afford one unhappy customer to say, well, that defleeting process was a bit like, shitty, for a better word, or cumbersome, or stressful, or incorrect, had bad surprises at the end. It's not possible, right? And so it's all about like thinking how this can happen in the future, and how we can do that. So I've brought you here little bit of an idea where of one piece of technology that can help, and it's the basically AI and technology that we're using in our Manheim Express tool today. So if we go from left to right on that slide deck here, you see that on the left hand side, first of all, we enhance the customer experience by a scanner. So instead of having to key in a 17-digit number as an identifier, your vehicle identification number, you can just scan it. The system will automatically pull through the data. In this case, we're using DAT data here, but as customers, we could connect with different environments. And then we launch the AI damage detection, and basically ask the customer to go around his car, and all that in the palm of his hand to basically go around the car. And then it takes about 8 photos to go around the car. Customer then gets, within 2 minutes, the damages that the system, the technology has identified, and gets a review mode where he can then decide, well, this one's actually on the car, this one's not on the car, or if the car is if the AI has overseen something, can go back and say, hey, you've actually overlooked this one here. Add a single picture, and off you go, right? That's a process that takes less than 7 minutes. Now, compare that process with standard appraisals, and that's a much longer time. Now, conscious this only works for the outside, so I'm talking about outside here today. We'd definitely have to look at solutions in the inside, and there's also more to it when it comes to verifying the specification, are the alloys the right alloys, any other items missing. But all these processes can actually be digitalized, and you can actually create that customer journey to kind of like, upfront give the customer the possibility to really go and do this this appraisal or this self-check himself, and actually help him with the right technology. So if we then if we then look into like what does it actually do, it really increases the efficiency. It can allow you to do that process like 30 days before the car comes back, to prepare the actual defleeting if you're in a traditional scheme. If you're in a 2 weeks process, you can do all that online. You can work with lighter versions because you're not bothered about every scratch of the car. Depending on your use case, that process can actually get adjusted. And what it does actually if you think about your mobility provider, or somebody that has a shared fleet that changes ownership quite often, it kind of gives you that consistent data. It gives you that a repeatable process where you can actually compare status to status, from rent to rent, the defleeting experience and the status of the car. So you can track back damages to the usage of a certain customer, and basically go back then and look at charging it out. Now I'm conscious what I've described so far doesn't have a connection to any to any valuation tool today. But again, there is possibilities, and we are in talks right now with some of the classical appraisal companies to basically do that in the back office, right? So you get the pictures, you get everything online, and instead of sending the inspector physically, the inspectors will sit in their home office, sit in the central office, have access to a database, look at the cars, look at the pictures, and then just create those appraisals within very short time, and actually can create probably 50, 60 appraisals an hour, compared to like doing the stuff physically and being tied up by running around the car, taking all the pictures. It's about splitting the process and creating really efficiency in the process chain and addressing that data shortfall, really. So yeah, it is really a circular experience here. If you look at that now, if you start with that self-assessment, AI guided, the data capture, where you connect external parties, and then you create that confidence by doing it over and over again. You then can come to a point where you can underwrite those values without the need really for a physical inspection in the future. So, the more you do that, and the more this becomes a standard process, the more accurate it gets, and it all leads down to more satisfied customers, right? So that's where the future of this defleeting process really has to lead to. That process that for a long time has been a process that has been feared by customers should become a real engaging and satisfying journey. If you think about, if we go to that last slide of mine, and if we look at how to do it, if you put the appraisal tool in the hand of the user and you connect it with internal systems, with data, third-party data providers, and you give the customer that front end in its hand, you really have then the chance to sell that car and create that custom satisfaction in no time. So really a solution that focuses on the most valuable KPI in our business nowadays, which is ultimately customer satisfaction, and it uses various data strains along the way. So that's all from my side today. Short little overview into the future, and with that, happy to take questions. I can't see the screens right now, so I'll stop screen sharing.
Okay, no problem. Thanks. Just one question from my side, and we've been talking about this a bit before, but you say appraisal based on pictures, based on data. Now, I think we've seen a lot of initiatives like people that buy any car, we buy any car, even that. And there's a current challenge on sourcing. You got companies like for example, they offer to take back your vehicle, but more as a service. So do you think that based on that process can also be easier made? That basically a private makes these pictures through an app, gives in the data or scans the VIN, and then basically you can easily have an appraisal made?
Absolutely, and this is definitely the future, I think, and exactly the process that I've just described here. Now, while I've described it obviously from a defleeting perspective, I think to do that engagement, it is absolutely the right way. A lot of these companies use economies of scale, and they're all playing the game of volume. In that, they're taking a lot of risk when it comes to buying those cars. This risk can be reduced by actually using the AI and relying on these pictures. So yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, we have a question that came in the chat. Maybe you take. I don't know if you see the question. How how accurate is basically an assessment based on just a small amount of pictures?
Yeah, I think there's a clear answer here. This is a technology in its nascence, in its early years. I think there's anybody who's around, and I know we've had some of the companies today presenting, will completely agree with that. We're using a technology that uses a mobile device, so that's obviously even more vulnerable when it comes to the accuracy. But I would say, and that's what we played back from our dealers that are using the technology today, it does a great job in 85% of the cases. There's about 15% that the tool gets what we call a false positive, or it misses something. And if you look at, depending on which age of the car you're at, the external view is obviously one key differentiator. Now we can talk about OBD2 readers for more health-driven statuses of the car and so on. So there's more to be done, definitely. But I think if you're taking a pure outside view and you want to have an open, honest, and transparent view that you can produce very fast, which is also something that our modern consumers are looking at, then this is definitely a way to go down the road.